Hey, Strong Girls. I'm Molly Herford, sports journalist, ultra runner, cyclist, and author, and founder of Strong Girl Publishing.
And I'm Dr. Sasha Golish, executive director of Yellow Running Shoes, a researcher, engineer, elite runner, and your BFF who's breaking down the science of smashing barriers in women's sports.
Think of us as the intersection of science and culture for women and girls in sport. Each week, we'll dissect the latest headlines and cutting-edge research on female athletes.
Debunk myths about girls in sport. Talk about how hormones affect performance at every age, to the latest research in sports science around mental performance, nutrition, equipment, and so much more.
And we'll spotlight badass girls and women who are rewriting the rules of the game, sometimes literally.
Expect it to be nerdy.
And occasionally TMI.
But it will always be honest.
Whether you're a strong girl yourself or you're raising one, this show is for you. Welcome to Strong Girl Talk,
where sports science meets sisterhood.
We don't actually need to immediately start, but I just wanted to have it on there. But
yeah,
we should really get this done.
Why is it with these headphones that my cowlick at the back just has to be why? Just.
Meanwhile, I'm I feel like I'm actually having a really good hair day right now.
I love the whole fit. I love the necklaces, the hair, the shirt. You got a good glow going. So I know that you no. Can I just hand over my credit card and be here, can you order that for me?
Well, this isn't even an order. I got one of those Cricut machines so I could actually make iron-ons myself. So I can put it on anything.
Sorry. You said cricket. All I could think is
so our conversations.
What are you talking about?
I feel so bad for Peter. He's been downstairs this whole time and probably what the fuck is happening up there?
Shut up. Just shut up. Rawls downstairs too. He's probably in his meetings being what is going on upstairs?
Very important meetings. Very important meetings. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. I tell you. Okay. We have conversations we should have for this podcast. We should do that. Before we both just are completely dead for the day. I feel like it's coming.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so we'll just get, hello, blah, 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 get right into our wrap up, and then we're going into the debrief.
Sounds good.
Okay. Hello. Welcome back to Strong Girl Talk, where we're all about the intersection of science and culture for girls and women in sport. Here with my favorite science meets culture human, Sasha Golish. Sasha, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I feel like you just want to say, here with my favorite science nerd, Sasha. I'm a science nerd.
Yes, but you're also the biggest women's sports fan out there, and I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you, because without you, our women's sports highlights every week would be so sad, because I want to be so much more into team sports, and I'm working on it, but your just encyclopedic knowledge of it is just so wonderful every week, and I so appreciate it, and I have learned so much and gotten so much more stoked about it. I hope all our listeners also feel your energy for this and are also just learning enough that it makes it more exciting, because it is way more fun when you understand what's going on.
Oh, totally. Okay. And actually on that, if there's any listeners that are soccer, football experts, can we please get together and watch the game? I'll buy your snacks, whatever you need. Just other than score a goal, I don't really understand the rules, and I'd really love to understand them better. And what better way to do it by connecting with community? So that's an ask I'm putting out there.
I love it. You sound I'm sure you've watched Ted Lasso. That feels like a thing that you obviously have watched.
Of course.
Just the entire 3 seasons of what is offside? Is that offside?
Okay, yeah. I'll probably, even if somebody teaches me, can't get that. Don't understand. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about races that I do understand, which is running and cycling to get us started. As you noted here, Sunday is the last of the world major marathons, TCS London Marathon. So what was happening? What's exciting about it?
Well, I got up at 4 a.m. to watch it.
Of course you did.
Right? Yeah. And actually it was great, because then I went from the women's marathon, and then the men's starts, I think, 25 minutes later, and then it went straight into the cycling. So like I literally had the television on, and I think I had it off for an hour before I started watching the Northern Super League. But so many really cool things happened at London, like just outside of the results. So one, they got the Evergreen Award, or Evergreen status, I should say, for being a sustainable race, right? It's also centered around gender equity. So it wasn't the certification, it's all about those like environmental things we talked about with Tina, but it was also about what they're doing in terms of like moves towards gender equity, and also the work the London Marathon Foundation does with all the community groups that they do. So it's not this just one day event and thinking about the environment one day. Like this is, they live and breathe this. They've got this like sport house that people can come in and learn more about sport or use the space. People really probably just want to hear about the results. So, results. Women's only world record was set. So I'm so sorry to this human. You know what? Asefa. Let's just go with her last name. So she broke the women's only world record. She ran 2:15:50 so fast. Okay, in another episode we'll talk about women's only and mixed results, because I've got like there's like a brain thing happening in here. But it was super cool to see. There were so many awesome parts of this race that I loved. I loved the video of Safan Hassan cheering her countryman as he came in across the finish line. I just kind of like loved watching everybody around it. It was just, yeah, it was a really cool event. I'm not gonna lie, I kept falling asleep while watching it, but I got the highlights.
I mean, it was 4 a.m.
It was 4 a.m., right? Manuela Schar, I can't remember if it's a world record, but she for sure set the course record in the women's wheelchair event. And Susanna Cerrone, who won Boston the week before, she actually finished second. So like, what a turnaround in 6 days, like let alone the travel, but like the actual output. So yeah, the whole race was just like so much fun to watch.
I would love to know her recovery protocol. I want to do it all. Yeah.
Yeah. And just think about the equipment, right? Like if we want to travel as runners, like if you were going from Boston to London, what do? You like literally like pack up your carry-on, hopefully get to do some laundry because clean running clothes are essential. But you know, like they've got their race chair and they've got extra race wheels and they've got their like everyday chair. Like it's just, I just have so much admiration and respect for what they do to make it happen. And it seems to happen so seamlessly. And we kind of like undervalue that, like just general challenges that these individuals face. And then they like show up to compete as like the best version of themselves. So yeah, it was really cool to watch.
Yeah, and then side note about that, we'll actually have an episode coming out sometime in the next few weeks with Kelly Brush of the Kelly Brush Foundation, which I did not tell you about yet, Sasha. But Kelly Brush, they actually work with adaptive athletes to get the equipment that they need because, especially at the amateur level, it is so hard to access all of that very expensive equipment that is necessary to do these sports. So I think she's doing such wonderful stuff. She's a para athlete herself and a skier actually. So yeah, really fascinating. Really excited to kind of hear from her, as we're finally seeing more coverage of these para athletes, especially, it does seem I have to give credit to the World Major Marathons because they've done a fairly good job of actually making sure that that is part of the coverage. So applause to them.
Well, and then we'll come back to the 10K record that was also set over the weekend. So this weekend is actually the Tokyo Speed Week. And Nate Reish, who is Paralympic gold medalist in the 1500, he's flying over to do this event. And so there's this like seamless integration of like para and able-bodied athletes in this like beautiful storytelling way. So Nate, I'm super stoked for you to race. And I'm like super curious to see what records you break.
Ah, love it. And on that note, the women's only 10K road running record got
Yeah.
broken this weekend.
Yeah, Agnes Nigetic. And so Agnes's name actually came up when we were talking about Grand Slam track, which also is week 2. So Agnes broke the women's only 10K record. So 10 kilometers on the road, not the track. The only like tearful, tragic, and it's such a story was Angels. Why am I blanking on her name? Tirop's Angels. Agnes Tirop was brutally murdered by her partner once upon a time, but she had the record before, and Nigetic just broke it. And so Nigetic, like there's just all this like reminder of like how far we've come and this like great story. But at the same time, it was like, we cannot forget this name. And so as these records are broken, how do we keep those stories going? So I think it was really cool. I think it's really cool that these brands are now doing these events for these high performance athletes, and generally the athletes they sponsor, and giving them a chance to do things that are a little bit different than we've done before, and giving women in particular like this opportunity to break records where, you know, London Marathon did a lot of great things, but the women's, I sent you a spreadsheet of anger, right? So the in terms of opportunity, like the men's elite start list was more than twice as long as the women's. And so, when I see these Addy Zero events and these ASICS events, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Why? Because there's an equal number of men and women who get the opportunity to compete. So
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely.
Okay, one more like big record broken, right? The Ironman branded event at the Woodlands. Kat Matthews went 8:10:34 for a full Ironman. So like very long swim, a very long bike ride, and then a very long run.
That number doesn't even make sense to me. And like as someone who's done Ironman, that number does not compute. I'm like, oh, bike time? Like that's not that great. I'm like, oh no, that's the whole time. Huh. Oh.
Yeah, whole time. Yeah. And it's actually, so I have like background research, not in our show notes, is the challenge Roth for the same distance is a little bit faster. I think it's 8:01 or 8:04. Still unbelievably incredibly fast. As it relates to running, which we're both passionate about, women are now pretty consistently breaking 3 hours in the marathon at the end of the event. So I've got Canadian Tamara Jewett. So Tamara's actually like, she was my training partner as I came back to track and field. Her email address, I don't know if it is still, her email address was sub 4 because she always wanted to break 4 minutes for the 1500.
Love that.
Tamara's an incredibly talented athlete. Yeah, love it. Anyways, she did her first. I was like, so at this record comes out, I was like, I wonder when TJ is going to like go do her debut. She also was at the Woodlands, and in her debut, so one, she broke 3 hours in the marathon, which I'm not surprised by because she's just this incredible runner. She broke 9 hours, right? Like in your first Ironman, one, so many things can go wrong that you just DNF. But to like come out like swinging, she finished sixth at the Woodlands. Like I'm just so happy for her.
That is awesome. I am gonna throw some shade though at Iron Man because I don't know if you saw the news that came out today. They are bringing World Championships back to Hawaii for the men and the women same day. Like that is fantastic. I think a lot of people are really psyched to be back to Kona. I mean, look, it's fine to have World Championships in Nice, blah blah blah, but like let's be real. Ironman, Kona. Ironman, Kona. Like you just it goes together. It's a
Yes.
thing. It's a huge
Yeah,
thing. Like
totally.
my dad once agreed that he would get a tattoo of like the Iron Man logo with like the shape of Kona if I ever went. So maybe that's still in
Your
the
dad?
cards. Yeah, my dad.
Oh,
Now that I'm like a master's athlete at this point, I'm like, maybe
yeah.
I should. I think maybe I need to wait a couple years because right now women in my age range are still smoking fast. So
Oh, yeah.
maybe I'll wait a little while. Maybe like the 55. Dad'll be like 90 and like getting tattooed. It'll be fantastic. But with that comes a cost, and that cost is the amateur women. So they were doing so well with the gender equality in Ironman. They opened up a lot more spots for amateur women, which, as we know, like if you don't have the spots, you don't get women into the sport. Like women don't come. If you don't make space for them, they don't show up. They've gone back to proportional slot awardment.
Excuse me? Come again?
So
Tell me
basically,
more.
so it's based now on, and apologies, I have not like dove deep into it, but what I recall is that means they're going back to the old way, which is it's based on how many people are in your category that you get the slots to Kona instead of having it be equal men, equal women. So in that case, it's going to take decades for the women's number
Hundreds
to
of
come
years.
up. Yeah. Like the math takes a while on that.
Yeah.
Because it's reverse exponential growth, it's exponential lack of growth.
Yeah.
Um, so that is a major disappointment. Actually, Sarah Gross, the CEO of Feisty Media, she did a great post on it and really broke down why it did not have to be that way. Like I know you can
Oh,
only
I'll
have
have
so
to
many
look at
racers
that.
at Kona. Like it's a small island, they can only have so many people. There were ways to not have this be the way that it ended. So to
Okay.
me, that is just Iron Man saying like amateur women just do not matter as much.
Okay. But then building on like this conversation's coming out after our conversation with Tina, one of the reasons I heard that they had split, like divided the races up and gone is just the sustainability factor on the island. So are we now like not considering the people that live on the island and now like they used to be a day apart? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That I am not positive of. I mean, I know it used to all be one day, and then I think maybe it went to 2 days where it was like elite and
Right.
amateur or something to that effect. Um, at any rate, I think you're right. Like they and they may have like cut the fields and like added enough sustainability efforts. I'm not positive on that end, but like the whole thing just is kind of unfortunate to me. We'll put it that way.
Totally. And if you cut the field, we know who are the first places to get cut? Women. So I did see that it was on the same day. I mean, we've been chatting through the day. I think I was like, I have 4 minutes to go to the bathroom before between these community sport interviews today. So I have not read anything about it.
Yeah, you'll catch up. I feel like this is actually our division of labor is actually like I find all of like the business articles because for some reason that's what I'm really attracted to. And you're like watching all the things and like have all the sport stuff, which I love. Yeah, weird division. But anyway, moving on to cycling, where Liège Bastogne Liège was beyond exciting as a
Oh
race.
my gosh, yeah.
Oh, holy moly. Your first note though, I actually love starting with, which is the Afghan road cycling champion Fariba Hashimi rode Liège-Bastogne Liège. For people who aren't cycling fans, like Liège-Bastogne Liège is one of the big monument races. Like it's huge, especially in the cycling community. It's one of the biggest one-day races in the world. To actually have these women getting the opportunity to ride in these real races, not just kind of these like smaller other European races, is really important. So exciting.
Oh, it was awesome. And so that actually to the point, like that's the end of the monuments for the spring. So there's one more monument. There's five monuments. There's one in the fall. I can't remember what it's called. It used to be kind of like the wrap up of the road season, but now there's like because cyclocross season basically like starts immediately after that. It's like I'm Puck is for sure going from like that monument to cyclocross season. She'll have wrapped up mountain bike. Um, but also cool at Bastogne Liège. I also mix these up. I'm having really bad trouble with my brain these days. I clearly need to do more work, more exercise, which I'm banned from. But a Mauritian woman won the race, and so it actually looked like Lotto Kopecki's jersey. So the flag looks like the World Championships jersey, but it's missing one of
Does.
the yeah, but it's missing one of the colors. So we were like, oh my god, Lotto Kopecki won it, and then it was like, no, that's not Lotto Kopecki at all. That woman's name is in fact Kim Court Piniar.
I was gonna go with that. Yeah, close enough. Um, and I mean, by the way, won it in a sprint with Puck Peters and Demi Vollering.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
you know how we've been talking about how I'm pretty psyched that like finally it feels like the women's field has like just said, "Hey Demi, we're not gonna let you win all these races." They are really stepping up. And the only thing that like kind of annoyed me about this is that I think sort of similar to when Kristen Faulkner got the Olympic gold medal, there was a lot of ado about like breakthrough result, like rider we haven't seen that much, like never heard of her. And I'm like, no, Kim Corpinair has been crushing it this season in particular, but like she has always been a factor in races. Like, no, she has not won a lot, but she is always in the mix. So this is just like the trajectory that you hope for, but it is not unexpected.
Yeah, totally. Oh, and such an important thing to say because then it diminishes like all the previous work that these women, and we do it to men too, but all the previous work that they did. And it's like, hold up, your messaging matters. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, more on that in the debriefing section of this episode. Um, but I would also argue that they don't do it to men as much because it is
Totally.
not nearly at like men were all about like the hustle, the grind, the ladder climbing all the way up. We are both doing the same weird swagger with our
I
shoulders as I
know.
said that, which is hilarious. Um, but yeah, men, we really like appreciate the journey, the grind. And women, we kind of want to have been like a shocking thing. Like from a beginner to an Olympian. How it happened for Kristen Falk? No, absolutely not. Like she was a racer for several years. She was an elite athlete for a long time before that. That made perfect sense.
So there. Okay, totally different sport. Because although I'm not watching Major League Baseball right now. Although I did used to watch a lot of it. Maybe I'll wear a jersey, my like jersey one day. I have several of them. But Kelsey Whitmore, pitcher, outfielder, she is the first woman to be rostered in Major League Baseball. Um, Super cool. Uh, has played a ton. Talking about, and so this hasn't come out of nowhere, right? Kelsey Whitmore has been playing on the farm teams. You're like, what is a farm team? It is the ranks that are underneath the professional Major League Baseball team. She's been an outstanding star at the Olympics, at World Championships. Like, this is not a surprise. But I also think, and one of the things, this is not in the show notes, and please don't kill me for saying this, but this is where sometimes I have challenges like, oh, then we don't need professional women's sport because women can play. And I'm like, this is actually an exception. This is not the norm. And it is phenomenal that this has happened, and we should celebrate Kelsey's achievement. But this isn't to say that we also don't need a professional women's baseball league. I actually don't know that we do because I don't follow baseball enough and like the women's side, but I'm always like professional women's sport, more, just more.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's an and, not an or.
Well, it's a and. And also I'm like totally sucked into being a Leafs fan right now, which is like whoever's listening is like, you're an idiot. If like have you learned nothing on this planet about being a Maple Leafs fan? But PWHL is expanding, right? So the seventh team was announced. Vancouver, rumor has it, an eighth team is going to be announced. There was like some news leakage on that, not to be confused with period leakage, which same but different. But yeah, PWHL 2025, 2026. We've got a team coming out of Vancouver. I don't know if it was named. I apologize. I did not keep up with that news. Yeah.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Okay, so we cheered on Northern Super League last week. Weekend number two happened, but we are not cheering for them this week. This week they get a big thumbs down from us for their social media management.
So, okay, and this comes into the debrief and like some of the stuff that I didn't talk about, but I think we're gonna have a whole other episode on like some of the nuance in this.
Sorry, what you're telling me is we need a debrief episode about the debrief episode?
No, no, not quite, not quite that nerdy. We need a debrief episode in just about around failure. When like epic failure with your kid or as a coach happens, like how do you help? The short answer is do not use the word it's going to be okay. In that moment, what they really need to hear you say is that sucks and this is hard. And I should say, like, now as I say this out loud, that's like a perfect segue into what the NSL said. So on Instagram, Northern Super League posts, the Northern Super League is disappointed to learn of the injury sustained by Amanda West while playing for AFC Toronto. And they did go on to say that the league is working to ensure that Amanda receives the support and treatment she needs. But as this relates to our conversation, words matter. So, like, disappoint means that you didn't fulfill something, that you've, like, let someone down. I hope not. No, Amanda, you did not let anybody down. I think what the Northern Super League meant to say, and this is where nuance matters, and, like, especially think about this with your kids in the car when you say, that was disappointing. That made me sad. It made me sad, right, Amanda? It's sad to learn of your injury. It made me sad to see you out on the field hurting. It's sad to see that you've suffered this injury, right? It's just so important that we pick words that recognize what's happening in front of us and that we don't add further mental harm to the physical harm that this person has already gone through.
Absolutely. And apologies if the social media manager is listening, but this is also why we don't let ChatGPT write our captions for us. Am I right? I'm sorry, that read like an AI bot wrote it for them. And even if, like, you know what? Use AI. Fine. Sure, absolutely. Episode on that coming, but use AI, whatever. Don't care. But you do need to read it for humanity. And again, read it for context. Read it to make sure that it is actually saying what you want it to say. There we go. Okay. Then a couple other just like quick hit things. CNN actually did an article a week ago, actually, that was talking about how female runners are, and I'm quoting here, increasingly embracing beauty routines and self-expression as part of their pre-race ritual, with many viewing makeup, skincare, and grooming as an important confidence booster. Okay, I freaking love that now CNN is like getting into the conversation and being like, oh, hey, women runners can in fact care about this stuff and still be really good runners. Like, it was a great, like, kind of judgment-free article that I really appreciated. And it made this point of like, this represents this broader cultural change where strength and femininity, oh my gosh, I can't talk. Strength and femininity are not seen as contradictory. And that's like the thing that I always talk about. Like, that's why I started Stronger Publishing. That's why I started the Shred Girl series, is because I felt like being an athlete had to be this separate identity from everything else in your life. And, today I'm wearing a, button-down t-shirt with my fancy jewelry and track pants. And you know what? That's actually now fashionable. And I freaking love that we're allowed to blend those things now. And I mean, we've always been able to do whatever we want, but let's be honest, societal norms do dictate how we do a lot of things, whether we want to be dictated to or not. But yeah, I thought this was just really cool that that was being shouted out. And then, yeah, my only other little stat I wanted to throw out before we get into the debrief. Actually, two things. One, to your period point, FIFA is funding a first of its kind study to find out if the menstrual cycle is playing a role in the alarming rise of ACL tears in women's soccer.
Uh-huh.
Pretty
Yeah.
exciting.
It's super exciting. And I think this actually the announcement sort of came on the heels of the announcement with Amanda West. Like it's it's so important. Um it's very hard to control for this. And I'll just park it there as a scientist so that I don't overrun this episode. But it's great to see that there is actually funding happening for this, right? So much money goes into men's soccer. We study men's injuries. We study what's happening in the men's game. Women's game, same, but different. And on the different side, women are more susceptible to knee and particularly ACL injuries. So I was so excited to see this work.
Yeah, even the acknowledgement that women are not the same as men in this case, right? Like it's not honestly, to me, the results almost matter less than the fact that we're finally just acknowledging that there's a difference. So yeah, fantastic, very exciting. And also another study, survey, whatever. Sky Sports has found 80% of UK sports fans are interested in at least one men's and one women's sport. So that means sport fans no longer are really differentiating, like, oh, I only watch the men's. Most of them are now tuning into the women's as well, right? Like, I think you see that in cycling for sure. People who previously only watched men's cycling now are watching the women's race. Same with running, same with basketball, all of those things. And that to me is awesome.
Well, I got to shout out then the WTA, right? So tennis has been a leading sport that for a long time, although the men's side is getting stronger again, more people chose to watch women's tennis. The game's a little bit shorter. The game has been so exciting. Oh my gosh, right? We've just had all of these stars. And I think like shout out to the WTA for really making it just like, oh, what are you watching? Tennis. And it was never about like, are you watching men's or women's tennis? You were just watching tennis. And so they're just such a leader in the space.
Love it. Really excited for the time where we get to the point where, what are you watching? Oh, men's tennis. Like where we have to, sorry, I'm watching tennis and men's tennis, right? I'm watching soccer and men's soccer. I'm watching cycling and men's cycling. Like, let's start that paradigm shift, please. Oh, okay, amazing. All right, I think we should get into our episode all about debriefing, which, sorry, everyone, it is not as sexy as it sounds, but we still think it's pretty sexy. All right, enjoy. Sasha, we are talking about debriefing. So before we dive into, how to do a debrief, let's start with what is a debrief exactly? Like, what are we even talking about here?
Oh, it's such a great question, Molly. It's that like it's the reaction, right? If you think about it, it's like your reaction to something. And so often, like, we're wired to judge ourselves, right? And we're wired for judgment. And so often then it's that, like, it's the self-criticism and the criticism. Yeah, it's that moment in time immediately. And then I would say, like, if you do a proper debrief, like, how do you do it within 24 to 48 hours after? And then, given a bigger event, how do you look back on it a little bit later down the road? Yeah, it's a conversation.
Okay. And it can be a conversation with yourself, but we're also going to kind of touch on like how to, how a coach should be doing a debrief, how a parent can debrief with their child about their thing. This is something I've written a ton about with True Sport, because I mean, my gosh, for parents, like this is even harder because it's not just the internal like self-talk. It's like, it's their self-talk from when they were kids and in sport and all of their layers of stuff around sport compiled with like how they feel about their kid and how their kid feels. And it is a minefield, and it's really hard to do well as like even a well-meaning parent.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, my gosh, just from an individual standpoint, it's so hard to do as a, human being existing in the world that we exist in, where all of your stuff, it's not just like if you won the race, but like everything, whether it's a soccer game or whatever, like it's live streamed, it's tabulated, like, it can be analyzed to the nth degree, which I know is your favorite thing to do.
Yes, I love the math. You're not wrong.
That's true. And it is that like question of like how much information is helpful. And then at what point do we hit that tipping point where now it's actually really detrimental to our psyche, I guess.
Yeah. And so like, let's go back a sec. So the genesis for this was, I was at the SPIN conference, right? The sport something summit, where you talk about sports science, and someone from the UK athletic, yeah, blanking on their name but from UK sport, they were talking about the debrief and the immediacy and the debrief and the decompression. And they just framed it in such a way. And it was like, how do you take that immediate reaction and think about the person's like body language and how they're showing up, but how do you come at it with curiosity? Because again, right, we started this episode with like, we often do these things in judgment, but what we really need to train ourselves to do, like given that judgment was the thing that protected us like previously, right? If we think about like the development of humans, how do we actually come at this from a place of curiosity? And if we I think about back to like our interview with Tina, right? And she did such a great job about talking about how she comes to her kids with wonder and curiosity, but in an imperfect way, right? Like you're allowed to be upset that your kid threw the mug down the stairs to see what it would do, right? That's going to happen. But then how do you come back to it through a lens of curiosity?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, the mug thrown down the stairs is like one example, but the Tina gave if you didn't listen to the episode with Tina, that was an example she gave, not just one that we randomly pulled out of a hat. But I mean, even if your kid does, like, to be blunt about it, messes up in the game.
Totally.
Right? Like, you're going to have a lot of feelings about it. They're going to have a lot of feelings about it. It's impossible to say like, oh, we should only like just be curious and non-judgmental. Like, it's gonna happen. So like, I think probably the first thing we say is like, forgive yourself for the fact that you have feelings.
Oh my God. But that actually is giving yourself the feedback in that moment too, right? Like, and this is kind of where it's full circle. I think one of the things that we forget when kids make a mistake on the field, like particularly as they're getting older, is actually the amount of guilt and shame that they're already feeling. And then if we come at them as a parent in the immediacy to say like, why did you do that? Why is one of those words that like is really powerful, but it often comes with a certain tone. And so you're probably discovering this about me, but I try to use the words like, oh my gosh, tell me more, right? Like, tell me what you were thinking, right? Like, tell me what went through your mind as that happened. And instantly, like, you can have that like judgment in your head, just it's fine to be a human, but all of a sudden you're coming to your kid. And what that really opens up for is that kid can then have their own reflection with their emotions, which is really important, but that it gives them a safe space to also talk to you about making mistakes. Because you're right, it's not about pretending mistakes didn't happen. Like, taking it out of a sports context, like, this is how we actually like keep kids safe, right? Like we are wired as children to have very risky behavior, right? And like we have to hold them accountable. And sport is actually like that safe space where like they can fail and you can start to have these conversations and these debriefs and these decompressions from a place of curiosity, but talking about the ways that like, how can we do better? Because maybe that wasn't it.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I think you almost just said, like you said, you're right, it's a safe place to fail. And I think we should actually be celebrating that more and like flagging or helping our kids flag it more, right? Because I think like the more often when you're young, you can fail and come back, fail and come back, fail and come back. The better you learn that for later in life when like, guess what?
Totally. Yeah.
Shocker. Adulthood is a pretty much like daily occurrence of fail and come back, fail and come back.
Well, so I was listening to Melissa Bishop on a podcast this week. So Melissa Bishop is a former Canadian middle distance runner. She was 4th in the 2016 Rio Olympics, and everybody talks about her wins. And she's like, hold up. It's great that you're talking about my wins, but I just need you to know I lost, like, and I can't remember that X percentage, but like a gross number percentage larger than I ever won. But you're focused on this, you're hyper focused on this tiny amount. And so then we celebrate athletes, particularly athletes that win, in the wrong way. And then we don't actually like normalize that they lost, they made mistakes, they didn't finish races, they showed up to a race completely unprepared. Like, that's part of the process of becoming whatever type of athlete you are.
Yep. Okay, and I loved your thought about the questions, how you're phrasing it. What are the other questions we should ask, especially even like for a kid or a adult even who's kind of doing their own self-reflection? Like, tell me more is a great one when you're trying to pull it out of someone. What are other things they can ask other than why? Because I think you're right. Like, you're like, why?
Yeah. Why did you do that? Right? Like, that is the question that we want to ask. And I think one of the things that I really took away when I was watching my stepkids grow up was to say, I love to watch you play, which is still totally true. Can't wait to go watch Dax play Ultimate Frisbee this summer in Spain. But also, I'm just so proud of you, right? And really, as parents, we are, right? Like, as guardians, caregivers, coaches, like, we're so proud of the kids getting onto the field. And so I always wanted to start with that. Like, I'm so proud of you. I loved watching you do this. And not, I loved watching you score a goal. That's not what we're talking about. But then it's like, well, what felt good today? What was hard? I think one of my favorite ones is if there's conflict that I see with kids and when I see good things happening between teammates is share with me more what you and your friends were talking about. Right? And so again, I'm coming from a place of curiosity. So good or bad, it opens up a conversation for what's going on. And so, I think it's those things of like, what surprised you today? What do you think surprised me? I think a great one to ask kids is when there's a mismatch between the coach and what the kids are doing is what surprised you with what the coach said to you today?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
Tell me more why you like that.
Tell me more. Well, I think that's a really good way of kind of contextualizing like the discrepancies between what an athlete wants to do and what the coach wants to do in a way that really does take the judgment out of it, which I think is especially for parents, the PSA here is like, it's very unhelpful when parents, I think, set up kind of like a coach versus athlete mentality or a coach versus parent mentality. And, all too often parents accidentally do that, right? Like the kids hear the parent in the car saying like, oh, that umpire made a stupid call, or like, I don't know why the coach didn't put you in. And while I don't know why the coach didn't put you in is sympathizing with your athlete, the problem with that is you're setting up that adversarial relationship. So it's kind of an innocuous comment on your part, or you're trying to help your athlete feel better in this like debriefing moment. But actually what you're doing is creating this tension without actually like trying to explore it, I guess. So like, I think your question, like the way you're framing it really helps the athlete kind of explore it and even start to see it from, well, maybe the coach's perspective was this, or like, maybe this is the coach's even kind of encouraging that frame of reference thing where it's like, well, what do you think the coach was thinking about that? Because it might help the athlete be like, oh, well, I was late to practice 5 times this week, so maybe it made sense that he didn't start me. It might not be that egregious of an example. And there are times when the coach is wrong. Like, don't get me wrong. Coaches can suck. But I think too often we set up this like automatic, like, you know, just butting heads kind of thing when we don't need to.
Oh, I totally agree. And I love that actually you brought up officials, right? And I think this is a really good opportunity to think about like, how do we come to conversations about calls, particularly post game, right? Instead of saying, ugh, that was such an unfair call, right? If it starts there, how do you then say, perfect opportunity. Tell me more about why you thought that was an unfair call. What was it about it? What did you see, right? And so all of a sudden, I think the other thing that we really forget in debriefs is that we can't see through other people's eyes. And so all of a sudden, if we can have a conversation with like, well, let me get an idea of your perception. Let's see where we have like a shared understanding of that perception, but where are the gaps? And it's those gaps, right, that we start this like judgment and like anger and I think we know this is why kids drop out of sport, right? The Rally report said that, Jumpstart State of Play, the Play to Lead report out of the US, like we know that these are like top reasons that kids drop out of sport. And so I think it's really important. And actually, I'm going to go back to what Tina said is like, how do you set up an environment where your kid wants to have a conversation with you?
Yes. That I think is the very big one, and I don't think you get there by saying, why did that happen, or why did you mess that up? But I love the like what felt good. I think that's that is such a good starting place, because even that just turns the whole ship around, right? Like if you can kind of like have that one, it's like gratitude, right? You think of like the one thing you're grateful for, and theoretically that like shifts your brain chemistry enough that like you might still be pissed, but you can kind of see that glimmer. No, I love that. And it's funny, this is all reminding me, I was just hanging out with our good friend Misha Pell, one of the Stronger Publishing author of Sprinting Through Setbacks. So she was in California racing in Santa Barbara last month, or earlier this month, I guess. Next
month. We can't do
not
that
next
quite
month.
yet.
That's not how that works. But I'm like, oh my gosh, but this episode is coming out next month because we're the end of, oh geez. Anyway, so she was doing a 400, and 90 meters in, the official for one of the field competitions walked across the track.
Oh my gosh. It's like our worst nightmare.
Yep. Yeah. So she literally like shoulder checked him because she couldn't get out of her lane. So she luckily ended up still winning the heat, but her time, instead of being like 52, high 51s, low 52s, whatever, it was like 55.
Wow.
So, she crosses the line, and I'm so proud of her for this, because rather than like freaking out, which would be a completely honestly valid response in that case, like that's not an official making a wrong call, that's an official ruining your race. She just like very calmly like went to her mom, who's also her coach, and like talked to her, explained what happened. They went over to the officials, like they couldn't change anything, and regardless, she'd won the race, so it was sort of a kind of a whatever at that point to some extent, but her time wasn't great, and she kind of needed that good time in order to get on the world relay team for world relay championships, which are happening in a couple weeks. So between the fact that they had some footage of the event and like, they could kind of pull all that together, they actually sent like a very like legal letter to Athletics Canada, kind of explaining the circumstances of it and saying like, honestly, like this is actually like almost the best resume for someone going to World Athletics relays, because in a relay, stuff like, like lots of stuff can go wonky in those, yeah. Right? You just have so much going on, so at different paces, different times, like it's wild. So if anything, that's actually like should be a major, benefit for her. And she actually is, in fact, on the Athletics Canada relay team. So very exciting. I'm so stoked for her. She's excited about it. But I thought that was just such a good one of like someone who could actually take this race result, and instead of being furious about it, just like in her head, just click off like, okay, how do I get through this? And even just in the moment, the fact that she was able to continue going and still put up a 55 in the 400 is like...
The fact that she didn't fall is actually quite remarkable. There's resilience in that. You said something, though, that struck a tone with me. Furious. I think it's okay. I think we need to normalize being furious in those moments at times, but how you show up in those moments and what you do with those feelings. And it's not unleashing that ferocity, right? And being furious on somebody else, particularly even the person that caused it, right? Like being able to have a conversation with somebody about like, hey, and I hate conflict, just so we're all clear. Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, I am like conflict but all this research is helping me come at it from a place of curiosity. And so now I can have conversations about like, hey, we have this agreed upon shared set of values. From my perspective, here's what happened. I'd love to hear what you think happened in this moment, right? And then you come to this like shared place of understanding. But I also, in those moments, have my furious moments where I call yelling in the bathroom. And there's actually no yelling. It's only in my head. Sometimes it happens with my partner. And also just full stop, like all this stuff that we're talking about, like curiosity and wonder and debriefing. You get like a full get out of jail card, like hall pass with your partner. You do not have to come to your partner with curiosity all the time. I recommend it like most of the time. It's like healthier relationship. But like, oh my gosh. No, this is not a relationship advice podcast.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But
although now I'm sort of feeling like we probably should have Raul and Peter like at a table and record one, like just them. Just like, how do you deal with Molly and Sasha?
I'm like, and we will post it. Don't worry, we will absolutely share that.
That'll be our Valentine's Day episode next year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, I love this idea. Our anniversary is June 6th. I'm willing to sacrifice myself around that date just so that we can do this.
Hilarious. Yes, A+. Definitely happening.
But going back to this. So Misha's an author. I just read Amanda Stanek's book, True Sport.
Love her.
Right. You've connected with her. And she wrote a book called Protect the Joy. And what's our job in sport as caregivers, coaches, parents, however you're involved? Our job is to protect the joy.
I'm even going to extrapolate that to athletes. I think even as adult athletes, protecting our joy should actually be like our top priority.
I was just getting there. That's why we're the best. I was like, yeah. And then I was talking with this individual named Kurt Weaver who said like joy is the ultimate thing no matter what. And so if you really want to protect sport, right, you have to protect joy no matter the level of sport. So yeah, I'm glad that we're here together. But there were so many great things about the book. And I mean, you can speak to so many great things that you've had conversations about Amanda with True Sport US. And I hope some of that stuff comes back to True Sport Canada. But her whole book was just situated in wonder and curiosity, right? And how do we show up with wonder and curiosity? And the book, I think, is divided into 3 parts. And there was a lot of it's more on like communication, depending on who you are. I love that at the end of every chapter, there's do's and don'ts, which is like quite clear of like, don't do this. And so like, don't get in the car with your child and go, why'd you do that today? Right? It sets up a conversation that's just not going to help. But, I think it's so important that we just remember that in front of us is a child. Right? I told you I was watching Bad Influence, and it was a really good reminder, like outside of the social media, that these are children. They don't have fully formed brains. Most importantly, they do not have fully formed identities. And so we have to really be careful with the language that we're using in these debriefs, particularly in sport, so that they don't have this like fully formed identity as an athlete at a young age.
Oh, could not agree more. And it's funny because as you say that, I keep thinking about my dad, and this is going to say, so my dad historically reminds me that I'm very bad in heat.
Like hot weather?
Like hot weather.
Okay.
I'm very bad in it. Bear in mind, I didn't start racing or doing anything until I was 21. So like, this is something he was telling me at like the age of like 25, and it still sits with me.
Right.
Like, so imagine a 10-year-old being told like, oh, well, like you just don't do great in hot weather. And that's even like, that's almost like trying to be reassuring.
Right.
In a weird way. Like, I don't think my dad's trying to be mean about it. He's being very well-meaning. He's like, oh, it was hot today. So like, of course it was like a harder race for you. And of course you like struggled out there. But now in my brain, I'm like, I'm bad in heat.
Right.
Like, I'm a like adult woman who is like perfectly aware that like this is a thought that has like turned into this like thing I take as gospel, and it's incorrect, and I still believe it. Like, I know it's inaccurate, but in the back of my head when it gets hot out, I'm like, ooh, I'm bad at this.
Right. And we know the psychosocial can play a huge role. And so how do we make sure that those like one-off comments don't stay with us? And how do we make sure we don't make those one-off comments? And listen, I've for sure done it as well as a coach.
It happens.
It happens, but you have to have that awareness, right? And so, I mean, okay, I'm going to tell an alpine ski story because like those were fun. So I was thinking about it, and I remember I coached U8, U10. So they were young, right? And I just was like, how do we have the most fun? I want you to be so excited to come back the next day. But one of the conversations I had to have with the athletes was around crying when they fell. Part of it was, I just need to know you're okay. When you fall and you cry, I am so scared as a coach that you're really hurt, right? And alpine is a high risk sport, particularly in Ontario, where it's generally icy all the time. Not some of the time, all the time. And so I get like crying, especially at that age, is a natural reaction. And it just was like, I just need you to take the breath. But that's that emotional regulation training, right? And I was like, but I will be there with you to take the breath, right? So that you know that you're in a safe spot. And we will take the breath, and then I'll be like, okay, I know that fall was really scary because, I mean, I've fallen running.
Because I'm terrified right
Well,
now.
I'm like, I've fallen running, and I'm like, okay, falling on the sidewalk is scary enough. Falling at high speed on your skis is really scary, right? We're going to take a breath. Okay, let's do a check-in. Let's like wiggle our toes, move our fingers. Let's see how things are going, and see if you're okay. And it was such a cool thing to see them, especially when you like get down on the snow and they would fall and they'd be like, I'm taking the breath. And then, I mean, I did have some like horrific accidents. And I remember one day when a kid was like, is this bad enough that I could cry? As I'm like bawling my eyes out. I will not tell you what the child did, but it was pretty awful.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Yeah, all that to say, language matters. And in your notes here, I keep staring at this one. You have so many parents go right to, why'd you do that? Or how did it go? And I really want to flag, how did it go? Because at a glance, that sounds very innocuous, right?
Totally.
Doesn't seem like a weird thing to, like, that seems like a perfectly like reasonable question. You're not saying like, what sucked today? Or like, what did you do wrong? But you kind of are, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're really setting that answer up for bad.
Yeah. Well, okay, so then let's dig into it even further. Let's talk about like as a coach and giving feedback. One of the things as a coach that kind of makes me like googly-eyed cuckoo bananas is, how did that feel? And if you don't know what you're looking for, that ambiguous answer, often that felt bad. Well, okay, tell me more. Well, it's because it felt different. And so you need to be asking like specific questions. And so I'm gonna go back to alpine skiing for a second here. With 8-year-olds, could you feel that you were holding your hands up, right? We were often working at like keeping your hands up and pole planting, because kids like to drop their hands into their pockets. Did you feel like your hands were in your pockets? Could you see your hands in your peripheral vision, which you explain to children what peripheral vision is, so you can then use those words. They're smarter than you think, right? But we need to give them the specific feedback. And so, instead of saying, how did it go, right? Like my favorite 3 questions are, tell me one thing you like or loved about today, one thing you learned. And I always framed it in my coaching practice, like, what can I as a coach do different? And so to the athlete, like, hey, what's one thing that you might change about today? Curiosity. So you're asking them, how did it go? But you're not asking them, how did it go?
Yep. I love it. I think also, how did it go really sets it up to create that mindset of like, we just kind of automatically assume like it went well or it went good when we won, when we scored a goal. Like, we just make that automatic connection versus like it went bad when we didn't score a goal, we didn't win the race. Like, but that actually sets that kind of makes those pathways like attached.
Totally.
Like, how many kids are like, oh, it went great, I didn't score any goals, right? Like, it went great, I lost the race. There might be some kids like that, not many.
No.
And I think most kids would know that the parent, when they ask the question of how did it go, what they're really asking is like, did you win?
And or where did you place?
Yep.
Right? And so it isn't about the experience, and it isn't about the journey. So this goes like all journey versus outcome, right? Process versus outcome, right? Which is like, yeah, we talk about this a lot with like high performance athletes, but this is the conversation about process versus outcome with kids, right? And what we actually have to focus on is the process, right? And those, how did I get better today? Getting better might actually be taking a step back to then move forward, because you have to unlearn something to relearn something. Right. And I just think that's so important.
Yeah. And isn't it so funny that we do pay attention to this with high performance athletes? We have these conversations with elite athletes. We're talking about like the process, not the outcome. And like, oh, it's okay that in a track meet or whatever, like it's expected that you don't win every meet, or like it's understandable that you're going to have like ebbs and flows in performance and all of that. We expect that with our elite athletes. But like with kids, we really have this binary of like, win, lose, good, bad, instead of teaching them the language that theoretically they might need if they move into high performance.
Okay, not in our show notes, but when I did my advanced coaching diploma, I did it with kids in U10. I was told I'd never get the diploma or the recognition because it wasn't with high performance athletes. And I was like, fine, don't care. But to your point, I did it in a mental performance tool. It was called My Best Day. I wanted to connect with the athletes to understand what would help them have their best day. And so they also got to pick their favorite color because everybody picked markers. And I had multiple of like each color just in case kids had the same. I needed each kid to be able to have their same color. But I wanted to connect with them to understand who they were so that I could ask questions about how they could have their best day. We also talked about things about like eating a proper breakfast, sleeping, not fighting with siblings, drying boots and gloves, right? Like that will also help you have your best day. But it was really me trying to connect with them so that I could talk to them in a way so that when I gave them feedback, I understood who was in front of me.
Absolutely.
And also, who doesn't want to have their best day every day? Like, come on.
And what kids are actually thinking about that. I mean, my gosh, even as a teenager, young adult, like I never thought about how to have my best day. I mean, I barely think about that as an adult. But why not, right?
Right.
Like, and best day can still include being, doing your best in sport, doing your best in work, but also like just having some fun with it too.
Oh my gosh, that was like the number one thing on that sheet, right? Like my best day, like I actually wanted to understand like what is the thing that brings you like the most joy? And I can't remember how I asked the question, right? But some of them wrote down skiing. A lot of them didn't. And it was like, great. Okay, well, we'll talk in that language instead. Like, I love doing cartwheels. I was like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to do a cartwheel in ski boots. It's not easy because if you think about the weight of the ski boots, my sister was really good at it. So I like totally had the model of like how to teach kids how to do cartwheels in ski boots. And I probably could still do it. I will not do it with my knee right now.
No.
I promise not. I will do it next winter when my knee is healed. But just connecting with them to understand who they were so you can talk in a language, right? We do this with high performance athletes all the time. What do you do outside of sport? We ask them that all the time. Why aren't we asking the kids? And I get it, right? Like if you've got a big soccer team, it can be really hard. At the Launchpad this week, one of the things we did was talk about like how you would bring someone to a new sport together. And I think this applies to all sport is go back to smaller circles, right? And do like drills in smaller circles and have athletes connect that way and walk around, right? Have a question for the day. What's your favorite season? What's your favorite color? I'm blanking on what's your favorite whatever. Not what's your favorite social media is out. What's your favorite Netflix is out. Like something that everyone can connect on. What's your favorite subject, right? Like what is your least favorite chore? Cleaning toilets. Right? So that we can actually connect. And so then you can actually break it down so it's not so overwhelming, right? And imagine like once a week you check in with a couple athletes and say like, hey, what would make practice better for you?
Oh, such a good question. And I mean, parents can also be asking that because you might actually find like, oh, your kid is actually hungry before practice. And
okay,
like,
that was totally one of the ones.
There's a snack we can send them with. It's funny, we talked about debriefing. I think some of this is also almost pre-briefing.
Absolutely. Hilariously, I did fail my performance level track coach even with a pre-brief. But I think one of the things is parents, and like I was guilty of this for sure when my stepkids were younger, is like trying to fix things.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, you might do this with your dog too. And I'm like, okay, productive struggle. It's a math term. Yeah, I came back to math. You're not surprised, right? But like, how do we struggle with something productively, right? And so if a child is struggling with something, that's actually really good as long as they're like not losing confidence, starting to hate something, never want to come back. But too often we want to jump in and fix something. So for me with Harper, it's the ball like stuck in the chair.
Oh,
where I'm like,
it kills me.
right? And you're like, no, I could go get it for you. But if I just wait 30 seconds, you'll figure out how to stick your paw in there. And it's the same thing with kids, right? Like we know what the solution is. Their brain isn't there. The best thing that we can do for them with pathways is let them figure it out.
But what do you do when they figure it out and then they're like, see, I'm smarter than you? Because that's what my 5-year-old niece did to me. And when I tell you, it was very hard for me to not be like, I let you do that.
Oh, you have that conversation with your head in the bathroom, right? Furious. We talked about that already. Yeah.
Triggered. Absolutely triggered.
But it's to say like, oh, it's interesting that you said that. Like, well, what else could we learn now, right? Because
Oh, I like this.
because she's got a perfectionist mindset, right? So if we think like Carol Dweck, fixed versus growth mindset, that's a fixed mindset and thinking like this is the end of the path. And it's like, well, we're here now, but like, guess what? Which actually will be satisfying for you because you'll be like, haha, I'm smarter than you. I'm going to make it harder.
I'm just going to go do a quadratic equation over here. That's right. I know what that is.
Okay, hypotenuse.
I was just going to say Pythagorean theorem, so... that was the extent of my like math
Oh my God, I
high school knowledge
loved
that I
all
could
that
do.
stuff.
Of course you did.
I know. But okay, so but you know, if we thought about feedback, it's like, okay, so what was super challenging for you with math when you were a kid?
Oh, nothing. I just hated it.
But why did you hate it?
Because it wasn't writing.
Okay.
It wasn't reading.
Fair enough. And it's too bad that somebody didn't let you read a book that was about math so that you could have become more interested in it. I'm sorry that somebody taught it to you through a rote lens where it wasn't about discovery.
So this is actually like completely off topic, but in 5th grade, my uncle had told me like the best thing he did when he was in school is he had a notebook where he wrote down like all of the things he was learning and like all of like the equations and like formulas and stuff. And it was like really helpful for him to have on hand like for years later. So I got this notebook and I was doing it. And then my mom got a call from the teacher that I was not paying attention in class and taking notes. So I got yelled at for having my notebook full of math notes. And I feel like that actually, now that you asked the question, that literally was like a very pivotal moment for me where it was like, oh, this teacher doesn't actually want me to learn in a way that like feels fun or like challenging for me or like useful for me. She wants me to do what like literally taking notes in class, like not writing notes in class, taking notes.
I can't see you being the kid sending love notes around the class. I wasn't either. But somebody killed your curiosity, right? And I think that's such a beautiful story to understand, hey, this is why you shouldn't do that. Imagine that teacher said to you, instead of going to your mother, hey, let's talk about this. Tell me why you're doing this.
Or like even what's in the notebook.
Okay,
Like,
yeah, okay, fair enough. That's a great question.
that would have maybe been a good starting point because like she did like, you know, I didn't get in trouble for it after my mom explained that it was math notes.
But you did in a way. You got singled out.
Exactly. But it already like had killed my interest in doing it.
Right.
Like I was done.
Right. And I think that is exactly what we're trying to highlight today is those moments when we come with judgment and we don't seek curiosity with the person in front of us, we don't know who we're turning away from what forever.
Yep.
And again, it's not about perfection. And that teacher could have totally said, hey, I'm really sorry. I thought you're a writer writing poetry or stories or drawing. I didn't realize that you were trying to do something. So I think the words that are not in here that are so important in this is, I didn't know what you were doing. I don't have an answer. And I'm sorry. And not I'm sorry with a but, just I'm sorry I didn't see you.
100%. And I know that's probably like the hardest thing for parents to say because like and coaches, right? Because it does feel like you're giving up a certain amount of power. But you're not. It's, you know, actually way more powerful to say you're sorry. And that's the kind of thing that athletes and kids remember forever, right? Mm-hmm.
So on that, so I had coffee with Maddie Orr this morning. We both know her. We were talking about...
Oh, and we mentioned her last week. She has a fantastic book on sport and climate change.
At Warming Up, yeah. And it's about sustainability too. And we were talking about sitting across from someone as opposed to sitting beside someone. And what a great reminder she gave me this morning. When you have a kid who's like really struggling, the worst thing that you can do is put them in the hall or single them out. The best thing that you can do is say, let's go for a walk. So when we walk, we have to engage right brain, left brain to actually be able to walk. When you're locked in anxiety, I can't remember, I think it's the right side of your brain that's engaged and then is like firing in such a like intense, awful way. We've all had those awful anxiety moments. So the second you stop walking and you don't have to look somebody in the eye, you can de-engage. And I think the best thing that we can do when we have kids in front of us that are challenging us is to say, hey, you go for a walk by yourself, because sometimes we need to recognize that kids need to be alone, or walk beside them, but do not make them look you in the eye and do not make them talk to you right now. Let them sit in their emotions for a hot minute.
Absolutely, yeah. So, okay, I love this, and I think like this is maybe like a good point with like, especially when you're driving home from a sport, you know, this is like maybe the, you know, Do a lap. Take a beat before you get in the car. The car is nice because you don't have to have like the
Don't look in the
eye
rearview
contact.
mirror.
Um,
No, but really. So a lot of parents, to your point, when you get in the car, they look in the rearview mirror
sure.
to like, sorry, look in the rearview mirror for safety reasons, not to look your child in the eye.
yeah, with the kids in the back seat, you're right. What do you do in the car with other kids? And I think there's like two frames of this. There's like you're in the car, like your kids in the car with other kids on the team that you're doing carpool with. And I think, for parents, it is very tempting to go right into debrief mode, ask everyone, how did it go? Get all of that going. Thoughts on that before I then ask about siblings?
For sure. Actually, one of the things I think that, like, if I just think about like the pillars of performance, I think the best thing you do is like, hey, does anybody need water or a snack? Right? Because then it's not about the game, right? And we're actually building life skills around what do you need? Hey, does anybody need anything? Does anybody... Okay. Also for me as like the small bladder person, does anybody need to go to the toilets before we leave? Because I, as a kid, would have been too shy to say, oh my gosh, we've been at this practice and now I have to pee.
Oh, 100. That is such a good one. Even as an adult, I need that.
Totally. And sometimes I'm still afraid. Like if you're carpooling with people, it can be a lot. And then I think it is like often the conversation will open up then naturally with the kids in the car, which is great. Or you can start to then ask those questions. And again, it's like, oh my gosh, tell me how you all had fun together today. Because
Yes.
now you're not singling anybody out and everybody gets a chance. And I think as the parent in the car, well, yes, pay attention to while you're driving, is to really like make sure every kid's saying something. And if a kid's really not talking, that's saying something to you.
Yep. And I think let them is probably the biggest thing there. Like let the quiet kid have their quiet, at least especially if they just happen to be a shy kid who's like
Right.
awkward with adults, which totally happens. The other one I was going to say is I think one of the best tips is, if everyone's kind of quiet and it seems kind of like, ugh, honestly, have like the go-to like pump up song or like fun song, right? Like the song that the kids are going to get really psyched on. And I think that puts you in a better state of mind. I remember when I was actually managing a cyclocross team, we had the one water bottle rule too, which was if you had a bad race, you had your because I'd be at the finish line handing them their water bottles with their protein drink. It was you had one water bottle. You had till you finished that water bottle to be in your funk, be grumpy about it, but then you had to like click back into just like, okay, that was my funk. I could be angry. Now I need to like start emotionally regulating.
Oh, totally. And you bring up actually like that like funk part is if the conversation in the car starts to go negative, particularly around a coach, the other team, an official, anything else, how do you bring it back so that it can begin an objective conversation? So like, well, tell me why you didn't agree with that call. Like, what did you see on the field? Right. And so all of a sudden, and then also building empathy and compassion for that umpire. Take Back the Game by Linda Flanagan. Often kids, parents think that the official on the field is like a
brilliant expert, not just some volunteer
and a
or
kid,
like
right? Like, often like this is somebody who's a child who's also learning the rules as they go. And like, so then how do we say like, well, how could you have a conversation with the official in a really positive way the next time?
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, I disagree with your call. Here's what I saw.
Yep. Well, Washington, D.C., I think a few years ago had a problem where they actually they had to start canceling games because they couldn't get enough officials because the parents were so mean to the officials that like no one wanted to do it because it's a kid getting paid $15 an hour.
Maybe, or not getting paid
Or not
because
getting
it's a
paid.
volunteered position. Michael Lewis did a whole season on his podcast on Against the Rules about this, which was brilliant.
Nice. We'll link to that in the show notes. Okay. Was there anything else we needed to add about debriefing?
Yeah, two more things. I'd be remiss if I didn't use Brené Brown's research and Adam Grant's research. So Brené Brown uses the word clear is kind.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. And so our feedback and our debrief and our communication, it has clear is kindness. And
To be clear, that's also for self, like that's for yourself
yeah.
too, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This is like if you're doing your own debrief, like after your own race, like I think this is so important.
Well, okay, so then Vanessa Kuhlbach, also a strong girl author, who's the author of the Mirror Diaries, like this is it with her, right? Like she talks about self-compassion. Being clear is being kind with yourself. And if you're telling yourself a story, Brené Brown talk, that isn't the story, like what is the actual story? And how do you have it first that's clear and what actually happened, and then through a layer of kindness?
Love it. Love it.
And so then Adam Grant, his thing with feedback, and this is with adults, but I think it's really important with kids, is they talk about the feedback sandwich, where it's like positive, negative, positive. And I'm like picturing his drawing where like we see the bun as like the two positives and like the skinny meat as like the negative feedback. But actually in reality, what happens is kind of flip it, where like you don't really hear the positive things and all you're focusing on is the negative. What I like about it is he actually, the first part of feedback and debriefing is, are you ready for this? Right?
Such an important question, whether you're a coach, a parent, yourself, honestly.
Hey, introvert, how you doing? Because like often immediately after a big presentation, I have no ability to actually absorb the feedback, right? Like I think you're the same as me. Like there's no more energy. But what I say is, thank you. I'd really love that feedback. I just can't absorb it right now. Or like, I'd love to sit down and have coffee with you and like learn more, or like meet at this time. And so I think we really need to think about our kids, and like if the kids just had a really stressful game or practice or whatever, I think the worst thing that we can do is layer on feedback, right? They're not like, if our brains aren't ready for it, let's just have a little bit of compassion that their brains aren't ready for it. And then this idea, Brene Brown talks about it. We've already talked about this idea of sitting across from somebody, right? So again, you don't have to have the eye contact. You can let the person like kind of start to process emotions. And then I think the other big things for parents, and I am terrible at this, is having those moments of silence. They speak volumes.
Absolutely. I mean, even just, yeah, honoring the fact that your kid wants to be silent, right? Like, I think it's a real show of respect to not be like pushing them to keep talking about it. And you know, those pauses as they're thinking about what they want to say and how they want to say it. I don't know about you, but like I'm a very emotional, whether I'm like upset or angry, the tears are real. And it's really hard for me to talk sometimes when I'm in those states of heightened emotion. And I remember being a kid and like, sorry, my mom won't listen to this either, so I can say it. Like my mom was so bad for like wanting to drag stuff out of us, where it was just like, if she just gave us like 3 minutes to just be like quiet and like move through it, it would have been totally fine. But she would just like keep poking the bear until it ended with a screaming, crying match that nobody won. So
we still had those. My dad, it's funny you say that. My dad had a rule that when he came home from work, no questions for 20 minutes. I was one, question girl. Two, he's like me. He's an introvert, extrovert. And so he was just so tired that like he wanted to connect with us, but he actually couldn't. Right. And as a kid, I didn't really understand that. And then as an adult, I was like, I would come home from work and look at Raw and be like, I can't talk to you for 20 minutes. But I think, you know, in those helping kids be resilient and learn their emotions, right? I'm looking at Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, right? Kids often have like 3 emotions: happiness, sadness, and anger, right? Okay, so inside out. Like, how do we help them develop other emotions? And so I think it's having these like debrief conversations. Going back to the UK thing, I think one of the things that I will take away and always try to do moving forward is like, hey, and only if the person's in the right state of mind, adult, child, whatever, like out of 10, how do you think that went? Right?
ooh, yeah.
Because it's an awesome opportunity to make sure that you then, the next question that you ask is the right one. Because if it's a 10 out of 10 and it was a flaming disaster, right? You're not going to ask that question that's like, didn't you see the mistake that you there? Right? It's like, oh, I'm so glad that you thought today went well. I can't wait to talk to you about it more so that we can like, right? Or
Yep.
if it's a like brilliant day and someone's like, well, that was a 6 out of 10. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, wow. Like, and so closing those gaps. And I think it just helps us create self-awareness with people. I think it helps us connect better. Right. And then I think it helps for like way better debrief sessions, regardless of where you are in life, but especially with our kids.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Okay, we will include so many links in the show notes, so many notes in the show notes. Actually, I would say this is a really good one for parents to like bookmark this set of show notes, because I think it's one that you're going to kind of need to keep coming back to until you grease the groove of asking those questions. You know, we're all going to mess this up. Like, let's be clear. You're going to ask, how did it go? Like, that's a pretty, like, that's when you're going to mess up.
Yeah.
But we can try to keep getting you used to asking the better questions, the questions that are going to lead to better answers, better feedback, better relationships. But yeah, bookmark this one so you have it to come back to after your kid's next game. All right, we will wrap up there. As always, rate, review, subscribe, all of the things. We appreciate you so much. We're so glad you tuned in, and definitely let us know what you want to hear more of. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for tuning into the Strong Girl Talk podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely head over to wherever you listen to podcasts and rate, review, and of course, subscribe so you never miss another episode. And head over to stronggirlpublishing.com to check out all of the books by Strong Girl Publishing's authors, including Molly Herford, Misha Powell, and so many more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.